So thank you for joining our workshop this afternoon. We're nearly there. We're nearly at Christmas. I'm John Redman. I'm the founder of Modo25 and Ask Bosco. Modo25 is an in-housing agency, and I'm going to sort of have a chat with Dan, who runs that side of our business. And we're just going to have a bit of a Q&A, a bit of a chat. Please feel free to join in, ask questions, and we can make it as lively as possible. So Dan, do you want to introduce yourself? I'll then introduce myself. I'll give a bit of background on Modo25 and Ask Bosco, and then we'll just get into it really, and hopefully just share some stories of the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's gone well and maybe sometimes less well around in-housing digital marketing for different clients over the years. So Dan, do you want to just do a quick intro, and then I'll introduce the business and myself?
Yeah, we'll do. So, hi everyone. So, Dan, I'm the director of agency at Modo25. So, I head up our agency services. So, we do traditional agency services. So, managing PPC, SEO, sort of the kind of full range that you would expect, as well as our in-housing and hybrid offering. So, me and John first started working together, I think maybe like 12 years ago now, at a previous agency. And kind of back then, it was always the fear that a sort of a long-standing client, even if things are, no matter how well things are going, they might decide to in-house and losing that. So yeah, kind of refreshing at Modo25 to take the approach of really encouraging people to do that, and sort of a core part of our proposition.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dan. So actually, I've worked with Dan in a previous business, Search Laboratory, that we both were working at, and then when I set up this business, Dan was top of the list of people we wanted to get join this company, and I suppose I was inspired in a couple of previous agencies of actually helping companies go on the journey to in-house, and it didn't seem like there was anybody specifically out there that could help people, whether that be around what does the team need to look like, is it even the right thing for you? And actually, one of those clients that we helped to in-house over a long period of time was actually Argos. And both from a tech point of view, a team point of view, there's huge different hurdles, and it's companies of all shapes and sizes. So we're going to sort of get into that. And if you've got any questions, fire them in the chat or the Q&A below. Abby is on support as well, so she'll tee up those questions and make sure we answer those for you. If you scan the QR code here, you can get a copy of a white paper that we did with the drum, and features brands such as TUI, Hertz, and Gymshark, all talking about what their view on in-housing is, some of the pros and cons, and things you should think about. And also, if you email me, just email to that email address as well. And if you want to put in your email, if you want a sort of an audit from Dan's team to see if you're ready to move in-house, we'll just do that for free for you, and just give you a sort of a checklist of things to consider. So if you want that at the end, or if you want to have more of Dan's time or the Dan's team's time, just email us and we can arrange that in the new year. So we're a business of two halves. So Modo25 is our supported in-housing hybrid agency services business. There's about 25 people in that business. And Ask Bosco is our SaaS AI platform. And there's about another sort of 18 people in that side of the business. Super proud that we are a top company to work for, and we've been recognized by the best companies for that. And I think by building a culture where people enjoy their work and want to come to work, they'll do great work for our clients, whether that's the digital marketing services and in-housing, or whether that's building the tech that we actually then sell to our clients and also other agencies. So these are the types of things we get involved with. Everything you'd expect from an agency services, but also things you maybe wouldn't expect. So we actually do recruitment, we do a lot of training, we do a lot of planning, we help people set strategies. So, but it's less about that. We're going to sort of talk more about the actual practicalities and share some examples in a minute. So we've got the privilege of working with some wonderful global brands, quite a lot of football clubs, and a lot of household name retailers who've been on journeys with us, who are now fully in-house or been sort of half in-house, then something happens and they come back to the agency. So there's this sort of concertina, which we'll talk about, which is a journey we've seen with many different clients. But there's a really much bigger story behind Modo 25. So I met my business partner and co-founder Bon whilst cycling to Australia on a charity bike ride, and we're raising money for an orphanage in Uganda. And Modo is actually the name of one of the children at the orphanage, and she represents 280 other children at the orphanage. And through our charity work, both at Modo 25 and Ride 25, my cycling business, we raise about £200,000 a year that helps keep these children in school, fed and watered, and hopefully having a better opportunity in the future. And the person who runs the orphanage is actually called Bosco, which is why we called our software Ask Bosco. So what Ask Bosco is trying to do is help you identify where to invest your next pound. And we're not going to get into Bosco today because it's all about in-housing, but often you feel like you're sort of gambling with your budgets. This is one of my favorite slides. So it feels like you're gambling with your budgets, and it's just like, well, and if you went to speak to Google, they'd say put more money into Google. If you went to speak to Facebook, they'd say put more money into Facebook. And it's a complex puzzle that's suited for AI. If at any point you want a demo of Ask Bosco, just email me and we can arrange that. But what we're going to do now is really get into the Q&A with Dan and I. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And hopefully you just see Dan and I. There we go. So Dan, I suppose first up, is in-housing your digital marketing, either some or all, the right thing for everybody? And how would you sort of, at what stage of sort of digital maturity would you think it's a good idea?
So I guess the short answer is no. It's not for everyone. Just leave it at that.
Give me the long
but
answer.
Yeah, it's absolutely it is right for a large number of businesses, and I think you kind of hinted at it there, that it's typically not going to be kind of your first step in digital marketing. I think that the big piece of this is that you need to time it right, and you need to know when it is right for yourself based on like a large number of factors. I mean, if you are sort of first kind of dipping your toe in the water with paid search, paid social, I think it works well for a lot of businesses, but it's not for everyone. And the last thing you want to do is recruit an in-house team, find out these things don't work, and then have to separate from that team. So I mean, that's where kind of when you're in the early stages, it's certainly kind of getting the best out of an agency. But I think as you develop and as you get sort of larger, you get more data, you get more experience in it. For a lot of companies, there's going to be a point where they hit a level of, whether it's a level of spend or a level of control that they need, that's when you need to start thinking about sort of in-housing, and whether that's to sort of get efficiencies. So yeah, less money spent with an agency, more money spent on your own team, or whether it's to improve with communication, things like that. There's going to be a point, and it's different for every channel, where it actually becomes more of a viable solution.
Yeah, and is it a thing that's better for, say, B2B or B2C, or does that sort of discipline, is that really relevant when considering in-housing?
I would say it's irrelevant for the most part, and I think it's more going to come down to, rather than sort of B2B, B2C, that aspect, but your actual industry and the space you're in, and what are the range of channels that you're running as well, because it might be that you're a B2B company and it's really only LinkedIn that works for you. And in that case, you're really going to have to be looking at, okay, well, are we spending 40, 50, 60,000 pounds a month on LinkedIn to justify bringing someone in-house to manage that for us? Whereas most B2C businesses, they're likely to be doing more PPC, maybe Meta and LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat. And I think the wider range of services that you're running, the more I think it becomes a consideration of in-housing to get sort of better control of all of them together.
Yeah, and is it, and when you're sort of looking at this, is this a sort of a quick fix? Could you just go, right, I'm going to serve my agency some notice, and right, we're going to in-house? Sort of, what's the sort of consideration and the sort of phasing and timing sort of in the different experiences? And feel free to share experiences that we've worked on. How long should you be sort of thinking about? How long would it actually take, do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, and again, sort of touched on it at the start, like that's the how things have traditionally been done. And back when we started in the industry and working at other agencies, you'd find you get served your notice, you've got 30 days, 90 days, you're handing it over to an in-house team, and you might have a couple of documents and a one-off call to hand everything over, years of experience, and for that all to be taken in-house. And I guess that's what we're trying to steer businesses away from, because it's not the right way of doing things. And I think a lot of clients are frustrated when their account is handed from an agency, from one account manager to another account manager, but kind of wouldn't bat an eyelid sort of taking it in house. And I think that's kind of the way of thinking that needs to change a little bit. And the way that we recommend sort of approaching this is a much more sort of phased approach. So for our own clients that we've in-housed, it might be that we've been managing channels for a couple of years or even a couple of months, but regardless, it's that phasing over sort of 3-6 months of passing it between the two teams and working really closely over that time that's going to get you the best result. So I guess, as you've said, sort of giving examples, we worked really well. We managed the activity across pretty much every channel for Pavers Shoes for a good couple of years before working on an in-housing project with them. And initially, paid search, paid social, and affiliates all in-housed, and we worked on that kind of end-to-end. So everything from recruitment to actually kind of finalizing it and passing it over, and now a bit of a hybrid model. But that was a 6-month period of our teams working together, and basically sort of the account managers, account directors in our team working with the execs and account managers in-house at Pavers to make sure that there was as smooth a handover as possible, knowledge sharing, and also just thinking about, okay, well, what things might come up over the course of that 6 months that you're not going to experience in a 30-day handover or even a couple of months, and you're going to address a lot together, and you're going to work well together, rather than just pulling the plug on a single day.
Yeah, and is it a case of, because I suppose in that scenario, it's like, who's in charge, right? Because like, are you both not in charge? Are you both in charge? There's sort of like you have to, I suppose, be really structured and organized with like roles and responsibilities. Because I think the good thing about an agency, a traditional agency relationship, is the agency, you're doing it. If it goes wrong, it's your fault. Or when it goes well, we'll take the credit. Depends on the relationship. But it's real clear lines of roles and responsibility. But I suppose as you're transitioning things in-house, it's like who's pressing which buttons on which days, who's checking on what. And how do you practically manage that? What's the sort of, what either processes or systems or cadence of meetings? How do you practically manage that? Because that's quite a complex piece.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from the top up, it's important that there is one person overseeing all of this, where in-house, and I would say from the agency side as well. And I mean, the last thing that you want is to work on in-housing and sort of building a team, but they don't have someone to report into who's got the experience of the digital landscape, and for them to speak to internally as well. So traditionally, like your digital marketing manager is going to take on that role. And I think, it's crucial to have someone in-house who is sort of the point of escalation for the teams that you're building. I think the last thing you want is just to start, okay, well, we're going to get a PPC account manager or an SEO exec, and they're just feeding into your CEO or something along those lines, because they need that structure internally. And then I guess from our side, we would always have dedicated account managers or account directors who are part of the in-housing, side of things, and then myself or some of the seniors on our team overseeing it. But then I guess thinking about it on a more kind of day-to-day, week-to-week basis, we have a really structured approach to, I guess, combination of structured and also sort of flexible as well, in that we will always have weekly catch-ups with the more senior sort of people in this relationship. So our account managers, the account managers that are taking over it internally. But we've also sort of as part of this, for kind of some of the bigger ones, we've had daily stand-ups. So just in the same way that you might have in an agency, sort of your team's getting together to chat about what's being worked on for that client that particular day, actually working so closely that members of my team are daily stand-up, where it's them plus a couple of people on the in-house side, running through, okay, well, what are the responsibilities for that week? What's sitting with who? Who's overseeing some of the bigger projects versus kind of who's getting into the nitty gritty. And a lot of that as well is just going to be sort of good kind of management practices as well. So we use Monday for a lot of our project management, and a tool like that can help make sure that everyone knows who's responsible for what aspects moving forward.
And is, in your experience or sort of the experience over time, is the main motivator a cost saver, or is it a performance improvement, or what tends to kick this off?
Yeah, I would say that typically the two bigger ones are cost and communication, I think, and control. So I think that I would say, I mean, not all the time, but I'd say typically people don't expect to take it in-house and see a huge improvement in performance, because if that was the case, I think you would be questioning your agency for a lot more than just, oh, should we be taking this in-house? It would be, okay, is this the right agency? And if performance isn't working as it is, I wouldn't necessarily say in-housing is the right approach, because is it the market? Is it any number of factors? And actually, in that case, it might be worth switching agencies before you consider moving in-house to make sure that actually things are working to a level that you would be happy with. Then in terms of cost, as I say, often a factor, but not always. And some of the projects we've done, and some of the people we've been speaking to, so working with Cult Beauty, for example, they already had a big in-house team, and sort of the hybrid approach working with them was actually adding more to their costs, but helping to upskill and train the team and work out, okay, well, they've had this in-house team for a while that they want to expand, not just in terms of people, but in terms of technology. What things are that team missing, and what can we sort of help put into it? That's, yeah, it's not about efficiency, but it's about, it's not about reducing costs, but sort of improving efficiency. As I say, the other one I think is really key is communication, whether that's just internally. I think every agency has got the intention of being an extension of your team, is quite often how it's put, but realistically it's not going to be possible. And as I say, we join daily stand-ups, and we have weeklies, monthlies, quarterlies, but it's very different to being able to go across the office and tap someone on the shoulder internally, or messaging someone on Teams, or all those things that come with having that in-house. And I think that communication element is quite key to a lot of people and their decision to in-house as well. And as well, it's not just sort of the day-to-day communication, but also kind of the speed of implementing things. So if you're a fast-moving business and you're making decisions on things like, okay, we're not hitting sales forecast this month, we want to roll out a new sale, a good agency is going to see you through that, but is it going to be as quick? Is it going to be as efficient and effective as having everyone in-house working on that? And again, kind of you go over to your internal team, you say, look, we need to update ad copy, we need to upload this new creative, drop all your current priorities to work on this.
Yeah, and I suppose if they're directly part of the same team, part of the same business, they're not going to have other client pressures in their ear going, well, hang on, I've got 6 jobs to do for 5 other clients.
And I'm sure it's rare that sort of, I mean, depending on how good your agency is, I'm sure it's rare that you've got last minute requests like that and it completely gets shut down. But I'm sure everyone's had it before, where you get in touch with your agency and you've got a request, and they're out at a client meeting that day, seeing someone else, and it's that level of kind of reactivity that you need for particularly the paid channels that taking it in-house is going to help with.
Yeah, and thinking about channels, because digital marketing it's a broad church of skills, it's a broad church of channels. Where do we start, right? So which channel is the most obvious and easy one to do? Because now you can go to university, you can do a degree in SEO, or you could do you can do courses and people. So this isn't like voodoo and magic anymore, what we're doing, Dan. This is quite common.
You did start this sentence by saying which ones are easy, so I'm not going to say any of them.
I suppose I don't think any of them are easy, but which one, I suppose, offers, I suppose, less risk, right?
Yeah.
Where's the obvious place to start? And with that in mind, what certain things should we have in place before we start doing that? Because I think sometimes we've had these conversations with potential clients to go, right, we're just going to do it all, and we want to do it all in 60 days. And that's just not practical or realistic or setting ourselves up for success. So I suppose where should we start, and what things need to be in place in order to maximize success?
Yeah, I do think that some of the paid channels, so your PPC, your paid social, are typically the first ones to consider. I think the reason for that, and I'll chat about some of the channels in a little bit more detail, but just the range of skills needed, and I do think they're very highly skilled roles, obviously, and that's my background as well. But if you think about CRO, conversion rate optimization, you need an analyst, you need a designer, you need a developer. If you think about SEO, you need someone who's an expert at writing content, reviewing the technical aspect of your site, so your PR and link building. Whereas a lot of the skills for your paid channels sit within that same individual. So sort of your data analysis and strategy and that side, it's all typically with kind of one people or a range of people with the same skill set. So I do think that is the place to start. So your Google Ads, your Meta, or whatever social activity you're doing. In terms of whether it's right, though, again, I guess because this is the first thing that a lot of people look at when they're considering it in terms of cost efficiency. Is it right if you're spending less than 30,000-40,000 on those channels? Possibly not from a cost efficiency standpoint, because at that level, unless you're on kind of a 10% cost retainer with your agency, it is probably going to be more cost efficient to have it with an agency, to have it in-house. But that said, again, kind of going back to what we said before, there are other elements, and you might be considering it for more than just cost. And if you're invested very heavily on social channels, regular creative updates, understanding the performance of creative, things like that, I'd say that's a really big one with benefits of having in-house for you to be able to be, again, quite reactive there. Whether it is rolling out new creative for something like promotion, or whether it's having someone in-house who's monitoring your ads on Instagram, they can feed back and they say, look, we've got statistical significance that this ad's better than this ad, let's get some new creative rolled out. I would say the paid ones offer a lot of benefits in terms of there's a lot of planning and strategy and proactivity, but they are more reactive channels as well, and that's where you're going to get the benefits from having it in-house.
And I suppose all agencies out there, and I believe this, want to do a good job for their clients, but they're getting paid for a set number of days or hours a month to work on something. Whereas if you've got somebody in-house, they're on it 5 days a week, 9 to 5, and could do more or other thinking or other things. And also they can be sat in meetings picking up on the water cooler chat or what's going on, and they think, oh, actually I can fix that with a new ad on Facebook, or fix that. Yeah. So they're sort of in the business. So, and I think if I agree, yeah, the budget thing around what level, but it's also that sort of having just somebody around to go and ask a question, who's an expert. And would you recommend upskilling an existing member of the team, getting in a fresh new grad, or recruiting experience? What's the best way to do that?
I mean, I guess it depends on sort of
Yeah,
the
I was
level
just
you're
gonna
at
say
and the
that.
size of the
Depends.
team you need. But I think the number one kind of dangerous thing to do is take someone in your team who's not necessarily right for the role and upskill them because you need it in house or because it's something that they think they would be interested in. I think you need to approach it in the same way you would if you were recruiting for any role, in that you need to look at their skill set and does it complement the role. So again, going back to what I said before, like for some of the paid roles, very kind of data heavy and analytical. Now you don't want to take sort of your creative guy who doesn't have those skills and say, let's train him up on paid social because he's already doing the ads. Because, and I'm not saying that this person, you don't get creative people who've got the data analytical side as well, but if they don't have that, it's square peg round hole. You don't want to force it when you really want the person who is right for that role. In terms of what level to recruit at, I would certainly not say that recruiting at a graduate sort of exec level is wrong, but that's when you're going to need more of the sort of hybrid support that an agency like Modo25 offer, in that that person isn't going to be able to train themselves to the level of sort of insight that they would need, even if you've got that digital marketing manager role that I spoke about before. They're typically looking at things more holistically. You will need that detailed training and shadowing and guidance of someone who has been managing activity day to day for like day in day out for years to pass on that knowledge. And you would probably in that case need that hybrid support for 6-12 months if you're recruiting at grad level. Whereas I think getting someone who's got experience is obviously going to come at a higher cost, but you're going to get that you're going to get that sort of broader experience, wider experience, especially if they've got an agency background as well and they've seen ins and outs of lots of different business types. That can be a smart move.
Yeah, and I'll just share for the people listening in. When we first started doing this sort of in-housing concept, we'd say to the clients we're going on this journey with, you need to recruit a PPC exec or somebody, and they would go off and recruit someone, and then we'd be like, oh, I'm not sure we can train them to do this. They don't know really anything about this or anything. So we started sitting in on interviews, and Dan and the team would start asking the hard questions, but still the candidates weren't good enough. And I never thought ever we would have a recruitment business, but actually one of the big keys to making sure that the in-housing thing works properly are the people and recruiting the right team. And we've done everything from having people sat in our team for 6 months as a grad and almost train them in every single channel, right through to recruiting CMOs who can then recruit the team. And I suppose we're less worried about the fee for the recruitment. We're more worried about ensuring that the in-housing project works over the long period, and then we have a long on sort of hybrid relationship to sit in the background. Should anything happen or anybody leave, we can then parachute in somebody or pick things up if somebody goes off on holiday, or he's off sick or something. So I think finding the right people is one of the hardest things, and I think one of the things that people are most nervous about. But actually, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of solid experience who get excited about working with interesting brands.
That's it. And I think the typical sort of career path for people in the digital world is start at an agency, get experience across a wide range of businesses. But then I think eventually a lot of people like to specialize, and that's not just specializing in their specific role, but specializing in a industry or an individual business as well. There's a lot of people out there who they're looking to make that move and really contribute to a business rather than sort of a range of clients, really focus their time on one.
Yeah, and I suppose what's the because a lot of people say, well, I like working with an agency because they've got access to Google and Facebook and all this latest trend. Is that still a thing? If I've moved everything in-house, can I still read around that and learn around that? Or what would be your advice to people around that?
Yeah, again, I think there's a sweet spot, and Google's support as an example is changing all the time and goes through phases of getting worse. It goes through phases of getting better. I mean, generally, I'd say getting worse. But
Yeah, say what you want, Dan. I
yeah,
the last
I
10
mean,
years,
if
they've
you're,
charged
and
a
again,
lot of
using them as an example, if you're spending a couple of 100,000 on Google, you would probably have a dedicated account manager, and they're going to chat to you about what betas are available and what giving you that competitor analysis, market analysis. But that is, yeah, really kind of the top level of Google account management. Whereas some of the more junior levels, even if you're, let's say you're spending sort of 50 to 100 and you've got a Google strategist, they have quite different objectives. So it's product utilization. So are you using PMAX? Are you using broad match keywords? Now, I'm not saying that they're only focused around those things, but I think quite often at that level of Google support, they're not thinking about your business objectives as much as they're thinking about their own objectives. So, I mean, unless you've got really strong sort of senior Google support, that's again where like the hybrid model works quite well, because your agency with the range of clients that they've got and the spend going to Google through those, they're going to have access to that, the beta cards, they're going to have access to the industry trends, they're going to have access to your competitor analysis and be able to provide you with that, all of that insight. And similarly, I think sort of it ties into kind of the tech side as well. And there's a lot of pieces of tech, whether it's sort of SA360 or click fraud protection or DV360 campaign manager, that in-house, yeah, they're typically more expensive than sort of agency rates. So I think in terms of support and technology, they're two areas that yeah, having that relationship with an agency even after you've in-house can be really important. And again, tying it back to cost, quite cost efficient as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think those sort of the tech things. What's also been interesting, and I think bar a couple, most clients who we've helped in-house over time, we still have some form of ongoing relationship with on a month-to-month basis, whether that just be senior level strategy and support, almost like digital agency help desk type support, holiday cover, and I suppose all the relationship to Ask Bosco, providing the sort of reporting and insights piece and the forecasting and the planning, which I think sort of glues it all together. What one piece of advice would you give to somebody though, if they was thinking, right, 2024 is the year for me to in-house, and let's say they're spending £100,000 a month? What is this? I suppose the question is, there's quite a big decision because they're going to have to go.
I mean, that's it. My one piece of advice would be don't rush the decision. Like, and I do think at that level, it is probably right. If you're spending 100,000 across your paid channels and you want to get an expert in-house to manage those, yeah, probably the right call. But rushing it would be the worst thing that you can do. I think you want to make sure that you're confident that the activity itself is in a well-performing, stable position, and then think about, okay, well, how can we make this work over a 3 to 6 month period, not how can we make this work on January the 1st or February the 1st after my notice is kicked in.
And we talked about paid channels. We'll just quickly wrap up. We're going to carry on for about another 5 minutes. If anybody's got any questions, just fire them in. We'll share the QR code again to download the white paper. And if you do want Dan to do a bit of an in-housing readiness audit with his team on your business, just drop us an email and we can get that arranged. But you mentioned before paid channels were the obvious place to start first. So where would you go after that? What about affiliates? Is that something you could bring in-house, or what about the sort of elements of SEO? And I know you mentioned SEO, there's multiple facets, but
Yeah.
which ones would you bring in next?
So I think that from an SEO point of view, I think that's where having a combination of agency support and in-house works really well. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's like the hybrid model. It kind of is, kind of isn't, but it's been a way that a lot of agencies have been working for some time. And I think sort of your SEO, the content side of your SEO strategy is the next have to pay, probably the next obvious or the next big step. Because your agency, no matter how long you've been working together, no matter how well they know your business, they're not going to know it as well as someone who lives and breathes your business day in, day out. And what I'd say is the perfect relationship from an SEO point of view is that you've got someone in-house who's writing your content, and that's everything from sort of your short form on-site content to blogs, any off-site pieces you're doing, your product descriptions, your categories, sort of every level of it. You want someone in-house who understands the business to almost lead that, but then with support from an agency. So that's where you get an SEO manager to review that with that kind of relationship traditionally. And I do think over time that can be, with a good relationship between an agency and your in-house person, that almost can be ongoing training and upskilling to eventually have a person who is focused around content, but they've always got SEO in the back of their mind when they're writing that, because most of the time the first person that you get into your business, unless you've already thought about this in advance, people who come into the business to write content, they're not writing with SEO in mind. They're writing with, how can I make this content read as nicely as possible? And really that it does need thinking about both aspects of it. So yeah, that would be the number one next. I think affiliates certainly can be, but I think generally speaking, the majority of businesses aren't investing a huge amount on affiliates to sort of justify sort of a full-time position there. So yeah, unless you're looking at getting sort of a paid manager who's working across search, social, and affiliates, say, it's typically not one that you're going to get a standalone person for. But I do think that again, with the right training, someone can be skilled up across the range of those.
Yeah, and then CRO, we've said, is probably just at the moment, we've not seen anybody successfully do that, unless you're massive, right? Unless you are.
Yeah. So, I mean, with like the partnerships we've got with the Office Group, the Instant Group, and sort of they're running some CRO activity in-house themselves. But you need a significant size team and business to be successful with that.
Yeah. One question has just come in, and then we'll wrap up, which is I'm going to answer this, then you can also answer as you give us your view as well, Dan. Is why do we think in-housing is on the rise compared to previous years? Recent survey I was reading today is 90% of companies are considering in-housing some or all elements of their digital marketing, and they're finding that, but they're most nervous about the tech they need, and they're also most nervous about finding the right people, and will the people just churn and leave? So they don't actually do it, but they're thinking about doing it. I think the reason it's on the rise is people are under pressure to get more from less. So there's a lot of squeeze. Advertising cost has gone up. We know that's a fact. CPCs are going up. Cost of advertising is going up. Competition's increasing. I also think that there's more skilled people out there. So there are more people than 3-4 years ago. There's more people who know how to do PPC. There's more people who know how to do SEO. It's I wouldn't say it's becoming commoditized. It's still a hugely sought after skill, but there's more people who know how to do it. And on the same level, the platforms are trying to do more thinking for you. So it's still very hard and complicated and analytical, and you need to still do a lot of planning, thinking, and reporting, but there's a lot of automation now available that wasn't available 2 or 3 years ago that makes it, you can do more faster, whether that's using AI such as Bosco or just Google's inbuilt machine learning, and Facebook's inbuilt algorithms. So I think it's a combination of all of those things. But I think the main driver that people are thinking about is, right, I'm under a lot of pressure to either grow faster with less money, and I can't keep spending on the agency because I'd rather save some of that money and spend it on media. So that'd be my view. Dan, what do you think? And then we'll do a quick summary and wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add to that, to be honest. I was gonna, yeah, I was gonna focus on the side of, I think that the more black box Google and Facebook are getting, and the less sort of data that they're providing, the more kind of businesses want someone who is in the nitty-gritty day to day on hand to try and provide a bit more visibility. Yeah, you kind of touched on that yourself as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, thank you, Dan, and thank you everybody for joining. I'm just going to share the QR code again. So if you scan that QR code or just email me at askbosco.com, as in ME, or just John at askbosco.com, and we will arrange. But if you send, where's the actual, that, if you email that, if you want a demo of Ask Bosco, or just email me or scan that QR code, you can get the white paper. So thank you very much. Hope you have a great Christmas break. And if you want Dan's audit, just drop us a note and we'll get one organised for you. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great rest of the week and a wonderful Christmas break. Thank you.
Oh, right.